Everybody deserves a second shot. You don't have the heart for this. It's a chill. Go ahead.
An enemy has been slain. Killing spree. An enemy has been slain. An enemy has been slain.
Death should be the end. Don't look so grim. Just
destroyed a turret. Shut down.
You don't have something is rotten here.
What's up guys, it's me Jeremy. Quite a few champions in League end up with low win rates and are underrepresented in solo queue due to how difficult they are to play. However, if you put in the time and effort to get good at a champion that is really hard to play, you can often have a lot of success, since these kinds of champions tend to not really get nerfed as harshly as some of the others, due to the fact that them being super hard to play holds them back just a tiny bit. And in fact, these champions on the list are all quite powerful if you put in the time to get good at them. As we count down the top 10 hardest champions to play in League of Legends, we'll be measuring them by how hard the champion is to get good at and play at a really high level. Anyways, let's get started. At number 10, we have Cassiopeia. With her micromechanics of having to deal with her poison, as well as having to kite and position to be effective on her, since she's fairly immobile and can get bursted down quite easily, add into an ultimate that is fairly easy to outplay and thus extremely hard to hit properly, and this solid snake mid laner is left with a kit that requires a lot of mechanical skill and really smart play to set up her ultimate. She has a ton of outplay potential due to the movement speed bonus on her Noxious Blast, but making use of that effectively to dodge skill shots, kite, and micro her poison so that it doesn't run out all at the same time can be quite challenging for someone new to that style of champion. But when played at a super high level, she becomes incredibly strong, since her kit is quite powerful and has a fair amount of tools, but getting to that level of play is extremely difficult. Next up, at number 9, we have Bard. Now, Bard might not be the most mechanically difficult champion, but landing his ultimate and making good use of a magical journey is really tough, especially since one bad play, one bad ultimate can potentially go as far as to cost your team the entire game. His kit is quite unforgiving if you mess up, due to the fact that his skills can really help your enemies, and so you really have to have a good knowledge and awareness to make plays with his portals, and when you throw out his ultimate, you have 10 people to consider that you could potentially hit, rather than the normal 5 of a regular skill shot, and depending on who you hit, the outcome of a fight can change dramatically, and getting to the point where you can hit his ultimate effectively and reliably is incredibly difficult, and is one of the main reasons why Bard has a reasonably low win rate. At number 8, it's Twisted Fate. Now, Twisted Fate's mechanics as well aren't too crazy, as they are mostly limited to picking the right card in a high pressure situation, and aiming your wild cards to angle off and hit multiple targets. And so his mechanics only waver on the fairly above average range in terms of difficulty, and so what truly makes him really hard to play is the decision making required to perform well with him. Twisted Fate does not have a very high damage kit, nor a lot of outplay potential, and so you need a lot of good awareness and understanding of the game as a whole in order to effectively make plays with him. If you mess up your teleport or go for a bad roam, you'll get punished really hard, since when Twisted Fate is behind, his damage is extremely non-impactful, and his impact on the game becomes that of a glorified support. But if you can manage to make really smart plays and have really good positioning in teamfights, as well as picking the right cards when you have people jumping in on you, Twisted Fate can be one of the best champions to carry games with, due to his global presence that he can pull off. Next up at number 7, we have Thresh. Now, at first glance, Thresh doesn't seem too crazy, but to play him at a really high level actually takes a lot of mechanical skill, as his mechanics within his kit are actually quite hard to pull off. Landing his hook against a decent player is quite tough, since the skill shot is really slow, and so people tend to use mobility to dodge it fairly easily, and so you have to get good at pulling off mad life hooks just to be able to land the ability most of the time. As well as positioning his lantern in a good spot for your teammates to be able to click on it is actually a lot harder than it seems when you're put into a high pressure situation. And let's not forget, the mechanic of using his flay to stop someone using a mobility spell such as Shyvana's ultimate or Gragas body slam is not only extremely difficult since his flay is so fast, but it's also ridiculously important to succeeding with Thresh, since it drastically improves his kiting and outplay ability, and without being able to do it, makes you significantly weaker. And he's not super tanky, so jumping in at a bad time with a hook or missing one completely can get punished quite hard as well. However, if you do manage to perform extremely well mechanically on Thresh, he becomes one of the strongest supports in the game, and allows you to perform an insane amount of plays with his kit. At number 6, we have Vayne. Now, she's a champion that's super hard to play because her kit is really unforgiving. If you mess up her kiting mechanics and get hit by even as much as just one powerful skill shot, that can very often mean instant death for her, since her stealth isn't too hard to beat with a pink ward or an upgraded sweeper lens. And so her auto attacking and kiting mechanics are incredibly difficult to pull off, because you essentially have to dodge everything or you just get wrecked. Not to mention that landing her condemn on a target to stun them is quite difficult and requires some really smart maneuvers. But if you can kite and dodge with her absolutely perfectly, she is quite the hyper carry and can really dominate teamfights. Next up at number 5, we have Riven. Riven makes the top half of the list due to the insane amount of mechanics that she requires to pull off effectively, as well as the decision making required with her in teamfights. Knowing when to enter a fight is really tough, since she can get punished and locked down by crowd control so easily that if you enter a fight too early, you get punished super hard, and if you enter too late, you can really miss your opportunity to kill people. Not to mention the mechanics involved around using her kit efficiently is extremely complex, and so using them to combo and maximize her damage effectively and efficiently is incredibly difficult, not to mention microing her auto attacks and dodging skill shots, and so you get left with an incredibly difficult mechanical champion. However, she's quite snowbally, and so if you can pick up some kills early, a skill driven player can completely steamroll an entire game with the tools that she does have on her kit. And at number 4, it's Draven. Although Draven might be the easiest champion on this list to play at an average level, when it comes to getting really good at him, learning to micromanage his axes is actually insanely difficult, since in order to maximize his DPS, you often need to effectively be able to juggle 3 axes in a chaotic, high-pressure situation in a teamfight. And holding onto his axes in teamfights while kiting and dodging your opponent's skill shots is really important to keeping his damage at the maximum potential, and overall is just really difficult to micromanage. In addition, similar to Thresh's Flay, you have to really get used to stopping mobility spells with his stand aside in order to effectively outplay and kite a lot of champions, which can be quite a difficult mechanic to perform as well. His strength in lane is quite high, so even if you don't have the best mechanics, you can still be fairly successful, but his team fighting is incredibly difficult and can be significantly weaker if your individual skill can't hold up to catching his axes. However, if you can pull it off, he has some of the highest raw DPS in the entire game, and can really run away with a lead due to his raw power when you aren't dropping his axes. And at number 3, we have Azir. Mastering the Azir mechanics involving his mobility and kiting is extremely difficult, since you have to micromanage his soldiers around your opponents while keeping them in range, and going for plays with his shifting stance is actually incredibly difficult, since it's fairly easy to outplay, and if you jump into a fight by missing it, he dies really fast and gets punished really hard. In addition, due to the incredibly short range on Emperor's Divide, the skill is insanely hard to land, and making plays with it as well is crazy difficult, and is a big reason as to why his win rate overall is quite low, but is actually positive in the Master and Challenger tiers. The Shurima Shuffle play, where you jump in behind someone and then ult them back, is such a powerful play, but it's quite easy to outplay, and overall is incredibly difficult to pull off and super easy to mess up. But it's a really important part of being able to do well with his kit, especially when it comes to acquiring an early lead. As well as the decision making involved in his zone control is quite complex and requires a lot of game knowledge to be good at. But if you can manage to play him perfectly, he's one of the strongest mid laners in the entire game right now, and has a ton of power that you can use to make plays. And at number 2, it's Yasuo. Yasuo is another champion who gets punished quite hard if you make a mistake. If you mess up with him on a wind wall or miss a tornado, his overall kit becomes a lot less powerful. The Yasuo mechanics of micromanaging your tornado, as well as his mobility and maximizing the use of his wind wall, is quite difficult, and both in lane and in teamfights he has a lot of trouble, and is easily outplayed if you don't know what you're doing. His laning phase is quite weak if you don't understand how to outplay a lot of champions, and his skills require a lot of setup and preparation to pull off successfully, which is quite difficult to manage as a whole. In addition, setting up a good ultimate in teamfights is ridiculously hard if you don't have other knockups in your team composition, and so charging up a knockup can be almost impossible in a teamfight, since he gets completely shut down when he gets hit by just one crowd control spell. And in the high pressure, chaotic situation of a teamfight, wind walling effectively and getting off a good ultimate is extremely difficult, but also really necessary for him to be powerful. So if you can make use of his kit effectively, he becomes super strong and has a ton of outplay potential through kiting his opponents and setting up his skills effectively. And taking home my number 1 spot, it's Lee Sin. Honestly, any of the top 3 champions probably could have taken the number 1 spot, so it was kind of a toss-up, but I chose to put Lee Sin mainly because of him being fairly weak right now, which actually in my opinion makes him somewhat harder to pull off the really powerful plays with him compared to the other champions. Landing the Sonic Wave certainly is not easy on him, and setting up ganks with him requires a lot of creativity, since he actually does not have that much crowd control in his kit until he hits level 6, and even then it can still be hard to pull off. In addition, the insect play of jumping behind someone and ulting them back is actually extremely difficult to pull off, mainly because of how easy it is to outplay the Lee Sin with a flash or mobility spell to not only deny the play entirely, but to have him kick the target away, which would actually help them in a teamfight. In addition, teamfighting with Lee Sin overall is just super hard, since it's really hard for him to find a role in what to do if your insect play fails, since he isn't going to deal enough damage unless he's snowballing. Managing his passive is also fairly difficult, and since he essentially has 6 abilities, maximizing the use out of all of them is not only super difficult, but really important in order to manage his energy effectively and get the most power out of his kit. Lee Sin was once reasonably easier to play, but now that he isn't that strong, succeeding with him is extremely difficult, and the mechanical skill required for him, as well as the game knowledge and creativity needed to get results out of him, is quite insane, and it's a big factor in his super low win rate. And so Lee Sin takes my number 1 spot for the hardest champion to play in League of Legends. And that just about wraps it up. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit that like button to support me, as well as you can subscribe for some more awesome content in the future. Thanks for watching, and of course, I'll see you guys next time.
Players being out of position and being greedy, I advise you to play her as a function of lethality. I do believe that Riven's playstyle has actually changed quite a bit over the last couple of months. While it is true that Riven has always been great at one-shotting squishies, that's always been her job, that is her main job now, and basically the only thing that you want to build towards. I find the best success with Riven as just playing her as a late-game assassin. In order to carry solo queue games and take the best advantage of many players being out of position and being greedy, I advise you to play her as a high-burst, late-game oriented assassin, meaning you take runes and masteries and items that are built for late game specifically. Now, this doesn't mean that you are completely useless in the early game and you're not going to be useful until 2 to 3 items. It just means that you should be building and looking for that power spike. If you are someone that is skeptical and you're not too sure what to think, you can see the results right here. I seem to be doing pretty well in a lot of these games, finishing the games with a really high amount of damage, basically the most on the team, carrying games with KDAs like 17-1, 11-2, 19-6, and you can see at the bottom right, my last 11 Riven games, I'm 10-1. Things are going pretty well for me, and I feel like this has become the best option. So what are the contents of this guide? Well, number one, we're going to talk about pregame, which is runes, masteries, and the mentality you should have going into a game. Number two, we're going to talk about every item that I think is good on Riven and when you should build them. Rather than give you full example builds, I'm actually just going to go item by item, tell you when it's good and why it's good for her. Number three, I will show you some combos that you can use and perfect to be good at Riven. Obviously, I can't give you all of the mechanical skill that it takes to be good at her. This video would be an hour long if I tried to do that, but for the most part, I can give you 2 to 3 combos that you can perfect and use to climb. Number four, we will talk about playstyles. There are many different playstyles for Riven: flip push, hard team fight, off tank Riven. There are plenty of ways to play the champion, so I'm just going to go over a few of them and what are my thoughts before I mention that I think the best option is a high burst late game assassin, but that doesn't mean it's the only option. That's just the option I found the most success with. Number five, we will talk about skin choice and why it matters. Number six, we will go over some common problems you may have along the way and any struggles that you could have while trying to learn her. And lastly, I will give you some useful tips for playing her. Now, please keep in mind that the reason why this is called a guide is because it's just that, a guide. I can only guide you to being good at Riven. I cannot make you good at Riven. A lot of that just comes down to you and spamming so many games on her that eventually you just become good. I cannot physically take over your keyboard. I can't Jesus take the wheel for you and just make you carry your ranked games. A lot of that comes down to you and your mentality and your input to the game, but for the most part, I can at least give you a few pointers, tell you what I build and what I've been doing to have success, but ultimately it still does come down to you. So let's get started. So for the pregame, let's go over runes, masteries, and skill orders that I use. This page that I use is actually 20% scaling CDR, and the reason why I do that is because I do not build Black Cleaver every game, which I will get into in a bit. But if I did need to build Black Cleaver and have 30% CDR in items, so maybe Black Cleaver plus Ghostblade or Black Cleaver plus Death's Dance, then I would not take 20% scaling, I would just take 10% flat to start the game. You can also see on the right side that I have an Armor Quint. Now, really, it still does come down to you, so let's get started. So for the pregame, let's go over runes, masteries, and skill orders that I use. This page that I use is actually 20% scaling CDR, and the reason why I do that is because I do not build Black Cleaver every game, which I will get into in a bit. But if I did need to build Black Cleaver and have 30% CDR in items, so maybe Black Cleaver plus Ghostblade or Black Cleaver plus Death's Dance, then I would not take 20% scaling, I would just take 10% flat to start the game. You can also see on the right side that I have an Armor Quint. Now, actually, ideally, I would have 2 Armor Quint this game. I just didn't have enough IP for it at the time, but armor quints are really good if they have a lethality stacker. So if they have Pantheon, if they have Quinn or Jace or anybody that stacks lethality in top lane, don't be afraid to take armor quints because lethality is the natural counter to not having armor. So if you build some armor plus ninja tab eyes, you can have a lot of armor very early on into the game, so it's really good against those champions. To be honest, the only thing that is a requirement for Riven right now is just to have lethality in your marks. You can go whatever you want after that. You can go health regen yellows. You can go armor yellows, you can go HP per level yellows, no matter what, as long as you have lethality reds and some amount of CDR, either 10% scaling, 5 flat and 5 scaling, whatever is comfortable for you in your playstyle, that's fine. I would just recommend having lethality in your reds. Now, the reason why I go 0, 18, 12 is, once again, I am building for this late game. That's why I go lethality in my reds, and the reason why I go 12 in the resolve is that is much better late game, but the ferocity is a lot better for the early game. But I'm not building for the early game here. I want you to think about my Riven playstyle and the success I've had as all or nothing. That's the best way to think about it. If you go 0, 18, 12, your laning phase is going to be really bad. It's not going to be good at all. You miss out on a lot of damage from the ferocity tree, and you don't have feast mastery as well to help yourself sustain in lane. You don't have the lifesteal, and you don't have natural talent. But that's okay, because this is the all or nothing build for the late game and build for the snowball playstyle. The reason why this is so good if you're snowballed is because you don't need the extra damage from Thunderlords if you're just ungodly fed. If you're 10-0, the extra mobility from Storm Raiders can keep you alive, and you don't need the extra 5% damage from the ferocity tree, but you do have 8% stronger shields, and you do have summoner spells on a lower cooldown. So this snowballs ridiculously hard. This is also why I actually max my W second as opposed to my E. I just do it for more stuns and more damage. Because I have the 8% mastery that gives me 8% stronger shields, then I don't necessarily need to max my E second. Like I stated before, in general, I would say the only requirement here is lethality reds. Any amount of CDR is fine that you go. If you go 5% flat and then 5% scaling, 10% scaling, 20% scaling, whatever you do, just have some CDR in your runes. CDR is a very important stat for Riven. I also like armor quints versus other lethality champs, like I said, and MR blues are fine if you don't want to go CDR if they have, say, Maokai, Swain, or Rumble. If you need to build some MR in that situation, that's okay. Once again, Storm Raider Surge is my favorite mastery and it's my favorite keystone to use, but Thunderlords and Fervor are both very useful. You can still use them if you want to. Also, I always take teleport now that Exhaust was nerfed this patch. In some matchups before, like against Tryndamere, I would take Exhaust, but now that it was nerfed, I just go teleport every game. Lastly, for pregame, let's talk about mentality. As Riven, your job is to kill the squishies, not the tank. This season, I play her as a backline assassin with the full lethality build. You can still split, and of course, you can just do whatever you want and control the map if you are very fed, but in most cases, you cannot 1v1 the tank, so don't try. I see a lot of newer Riven players constantly ask me, why can't I 1v1 the Maokai? Why don't I just build Death Dance, Last Whisper, Black Cleaver, and just try to 1v1 Maokai? That's because it's not really your job. Now onto the most tedious part of the video, but I think this will be very helpful for you. Let's just go through each item that I think is good for Riven and why I think that. So number one, Black Cleaver. This is a must buy if they have 2 or more very tanky champions. So a good example, maybe they have Maokai top and Rek'Sai jungle. This item is also very good if you need to survive for a long time in fights, as it gives you a lot of HP now due to a recent patch. The 20% cooldown reduction and the passive are just too good, so if you need to survive in fights or they have 2 or more tanks, Black Cleaver is still a very good item. I know I build full lethality some games, and some games you won't see this on my match history, but honestly this item is just still way too good. You just need the passive. Next up is Yumu's. This item gives you a bunch of stats that you want, and it's also very cheap. It's only 2,900. This is your best opener against a squishy champion such as Yasuo or Gangplank top. This is a very good item if you only have 1 tank on the enemy team, and I open this into a Last Whisper second. Speaking of Last Whisper, this item has now become extremely cost effective due to a recent patch now that you get 45% bonus armor penetration for only 1,300 gold. You could argue that this is now a core item for Riven, and this upgrade that you get is just completely game dependent. If they have a lot of healing, go Mortal Reminder. If they don't, go Lord Dominix. Next up is Edge of Night. Now this is Riven's best item even despite all of the nerfs. The shield that you get is just too valuable if you know how to use it properly and you're good at using 1v1 the Maokai. Why don't I just build Death Dance, Last Whisper, Black Cleaver, and just try to 1v1 Maokai? That's because it's not really your job. Now onto the most tedious part of the video, but I think this will be very helpful for you. Let's just go through each item that I think is good for Riven and why I think that. So number one, Black Cleaver. This is a must buy if they have 2 or more very tanky champions. So a good example, maybe they have Maokai top and Rek'Sai jungle.
Minions have spawned.
My spirit is not lost. Learn from your mistakes. It must come to pass. Burdens of the past. So long I've wandered. A sword mirror. Choose your own path.
First blood. An ally has been slain.
To serve the greater good. is not lost. Learn from your mistakes. My hands are stained. Time has stood.
An enemy has been slain.
Violence to end violence.
An ally has been slain.
Unnecessary strike. Learn from your mistakes. Choose your own path. The sword mirrors its owner. So long I've wandered. My hands are stained.
An ally has
conflict awaits? A sword mirrors its owner. Learn from your mistakes. How should I proceed? Choose your own path.
An enemy has been slain. Enemy has been slain. You have been slain. Enemy rampage. Shut down. Enemy double kill. An ally has been slain.
Spirit is not lost. Violence to end violence. Choose your own path. My spirit is not lost. My hands are stained. How should I proceed? What conflict awaits?
An ally has been slain. An ally has been slain. Enemy killing spree.
Burdens of the past. A sword mirrors its owner.
Your turret has been destroyed.
So long I've wandered.
Ally has been slain. You have slain an enemy. been destroyed.
How should I proceed?
Killing spree.
Burdens of the past. So long I've wandered. My hands are stained. It must come to pass. Learn from your mistakes. Choose your own path.
Enemy killing spree. Double kill. Enemy rampage. An ally has been slain.
They've crossed the line. Unnecessary strike.
Your turret has been destroyed.
What conflict awaits? My spirit is not lost. How should I proceed? A sword mirrors honor. What conflict awaits?
Enemy double kill.
Choose your own path. Burdens of the past. How should I proceed?
An enemy has been slain.
My hands are stained.
An enemy is unstoppable. Shut down. Aced.
My spirit is not lost.
Double kill. Your turret has been
Choose your own path. To serve the greater good. What conflict awaits?
An ally has been slain.
How should I proceed? The sword mirrors its owner.
An ally has
Choose your own path. A sword mirrors its owner. How should I proceed?
An ally has been slain.
For those who were lost.
An enemy has been slain. Killing spree.
And leave doubt behind.
Shut down.
Learn from your mistakes.
Your team has destroyed a turret.
So long I've wandered.
Rampage.
Choose your own path. So much death. Things of the past. My spirit is not lost. A sword mirrors its owner. My spirit is still. Conflict awaits.
Your inhibitor is respawning soon.
My spirit is not lost. Choose your own path. To serve the greater team has destroyed the turret. Memories of the past. Choose your own path.
Your team has destroyed a turret.
What conflict awaits?
Shut down. Dominating. Your inhibitor has been destroyed.
Choose your own path.
Your team
This item is also very good if you need to survive for a long time in fights, as it gives you a lot of HP now due to a recent patch. The 20% cooldown reduction and the passive are just too good, so if you need to survive in fights or they have 2 or more tanks, Black Cleaver is still a very good item. I know I build full lethality some games, and some games you won't see this on my match history, but honestly this item is just still way too good. You just need the passive. Next up is Yumu's. This item gives you a bunch of stats that you want, and it's also very cheap. It's only 2,900. This is your best opener against a squishy champion such as Yasuo or Gangplank Top. This is a very good item if you only have 1 tank on the enemy team, and I open this into a Last Whisper second. Speaking of Last Whisper, this item has now become extremely cost effective due to a recent patch now that you get 45% bonus armor penetration for only 1,300 gold. You could argue that this is now a core item for Riven, and this upgrade that you get is just completely game dependent. If they have a lot of healing, go Mortal Reminder. If they don't, go Lord Dominic's. Next up is Edge of Night. Now this is Riven's best item even despite all of the nerfs. The shield that you get is just too valuable if you know how to use it properly and you're good at using it. I usually build this second or third item every single game. The only time you shouldn't build this is if the enemy team has literally no hard CC that you have to worry about. Next is Duskblade of Drakthar. Pretty situational, but don't forget how valuable both of the passives are. I started building this more because of just how good the vision denial is, and the build path is super good for Riven. Just BF Sword plus Dirk makes it really easy to build. You get a lot of AD for it, and the lethality you get is obviously still very good. I would call this not exactly core. It's just below the idea of being core, but it's still very good for her. It honestly feels really weird to call Ravenous Hydra a situational item, but this is not a core item for Riven anymore. The lifesteal and the active are the best parts of it, but even with it giving you 75 AD, it does not outshine having more lethality or armor pen. I will say it's good when behind because of the wave clear that you get, because of the passive and the active, but I would not build this that much or very often, maybe every couple of games or so, or if I really need the lifesteal, but it's just not that good compared to building more lethality. Next is the Bloodthirster. This item is only good if you are ridiculously fed. If you're 4 to 5 levels up, 10 plus kills ahead of everyone else, then go for it. The lifesteal and the AD you get are really nice. Other than that, it's not a core item. Don't build Bloodthirster every game. It's pretty troll, but once again, if you're ridiculously fed, then yeah, it's not bad. If you know anything about me or if you've ever seen any of my videos before, you would know that I'm not a huge fan of Death's Dance, and I've never really been a big fan of it. This patch, it's okay if you go the full lethality setup, so if you go full lethality plus the 20% scaling CDR, then this is a really good item to combo with your Ghostblade for the 20% that you need. So if you have Tabby's Mercs, Ghostblade, and this for 20% CDR, that's all the CDR that you need for the game. This patch is okay, like I said, and I've been building this more and more than I've ever been. It's just I'm not a huge fan of it still, and I would not build it every single game. Spirit Visage is an item that I've been building a lot more on Riven recently just because of how many AP threats can end up on the enemy team. With things like Rumble Top, Zyra support, and just a bunch of different AP threats and mages on the map, I still like to build Spirit Visage. This still gives CDR, and healing support such as Nami, Janna, and Soraka are really popular in solo queue, so that increases that healing as well. And obviously if you build Lifesteal, this is good to combo with it. GA is Riven's best defensive item by far. It's ridiculously cheap and it's really effective. It's also one of the only items in the game that give you both armor and MR. GAs can be the difference between a won and a lost team fight, so just remember that. GA definitely her best 5th or 6th item. Lastly, just for fun, I will throw you a wild card. Blade of the Ruin King. The AD and the lifesteal were both increased this patch, and the active now deals 100 flat magic damage, meaning that if you use it in your all-in combo, it can add just a bit of burst to it. The new Keystone also gives you 5% more HP, so this is a natural buff to Blade of the Ruin King. If you use it against anybody who's using the new Keystone, then it actually adds a lot of physical damage to your kit. If they have a lot of health stackers and you're just trolling for a 6th item, try building this out. I will promise you it's not that bad. Now we're going to talk about combos. Now this is one of the most important things that you will want to learn and perfect first. This is called a double cast. It's high burst and it's not too difficult. Basically the idea is you use your E first, and then after a small delay you can use 2 abilities at the exact same time, so you can W into Q. This means that your W will not lock you in the animation, and you can combo this for an easy way to proc your Thunderlords if you add an auto attack in there. Next is the famous fast combo. This is her most important mechanic by far, and it's quite challenging. Doing this perfectly will take you weeks if not months to learn, but it is very useful. The idea here is you just make it so your auto attacks and Qs come out faster, and you string autos between your Qs a lot easier using a movement command. So the idea is you auto attack Q and movement command, auto attack Q, movement command, auto attack Q, and you can absolutely do this a lot faster. It basically gives you invisible attack speed on Riven, and because of Riven's passive, this gives you a lot of DPS. Lastly, let's talk about canceling your ultimate. There are a bunch of ways to both activate your R and throw your wind slash in combination with other abilities. So you can ER, you can RQ, you can QR, you can ERQ, you can ERQ3, and you can RW. All of these things are going to be useful for you because of the fact that when you use your wind slash or when you activate your R, that is animation time that you're wasting, but if you combo 2 abilities or 3 abilities with it sometimes, then it means that you can get multiple damage sources out at once. Now let's talk about playstyles. It's all situational. When you play Riven, there are a bunch of things that you offer and that are good for a team. You can duel the enemy top laner and split, you can team fight, you can nuke squishies, you can siege because you're an AD champion, you can block skill shots for your team with your shield, and you can snowball out of control. When you play Riven, you want to think about it like this. Early game, you win most matchups top, about 80 to 90% of them, and you can snowball a lead very, very hard. In the mid game, this is the trickiest part about playing Riven because you need to know whether you should be splitting or you should be grouping and looking for picks. Basically, you want to think about if you are fed, you can split until you have your flash or your ultimate up, then look to group and fight people. If you're not ahead and you're really behind, the only thing you can do is look to group and get picks with your CC. Use your mobility, use your stun and your knockup to help your team win the game. If you have a really fed mid laner and you're feeding top, just go roam and try to help them out. Let them carry you and do whatever you can to get them kills. Late game, look to flash on the carries and one-shot them with lethality damage. If you build the full lethality setup and it's just late game 6 items, you can do a ridiculous amount of damage and honestly just one-hit them before they even have time to react. When you are ahead on Riven, you need to look to play hyper-aggressive. You deal a lot of damage and you're really hard to kill with your shield. You have almost unmatched mobility, so don't just sit top lane. Look to take your lead somewhere else and siege with your team. You can 1v1 almost every champion in the game when you are ahead. If you're playing from behind, there's not a lot that you can do. As with all carry champions, you're going to be pretty useless for quite a while. Do whatever you can to find picks with your CC and just try to group with your team. Even when you're behind, if you have 40 or more lethality, you can probably still one-shot the AD carry, so look to kill AD carry split pushing side lanes. If you fed your top laner, you cannot split against them. Next, we're going to talk about skins and why it matters. The skin you pick on Riven actually doesn't change anything. They are all cosmetic. Don't let the silver players on the Riven mains Reddit fool you, it changes nothing. But when you're learning Riven and trying to become good at the combos, just for consistency purposes, just stick to using one skin. Do this to eliminate any variables you can while playing and learning her. As far as skins, just pick one you like. Using the default is just fine, and that's the one I learned on, and then eventually I picked up Battle Bunny after quite a while just using the default. There's a mistake on here. Actually, the Crimson Elite is only 520. I just accidentally made that mistake, but there's a reason why on the right side I have 2 skins in a red box. The 2 skins on the right that have a red box around them are skins that people will tell you actually make it harder to do the combos and feel clunkier. The reason why they're like that is because they have different sound effects from the other skins. So if you're not used to playing Riven or you haven't been playing her for a really long time, then you have to be a little bit careful about using these 2 skins. What you can do though is pick one of these and just get used to it. That's why we're trying to keep it consistent here. If you want to use Dragonblade or if you want to use Arcade, that's fine. Just make it the only skin that you use and you'll be fine. Don't constantly hop around between using a skin that has a different sound effect because it can mess with your head a little bit. But as someone who's played Riven for over a year now and has over 1,000 games and I own every single Riven skin, I can assure you once you get used to her or if you just play with the sound off, there's no difference in any of the skins. So let's talk about some common issues that people ask me about and come to me with. Number one is they will say something like, my fast combo is terrible. What can I do? First off, don't get discouraged. Everyone's is bad to start out. It personally took me hundreds and hundreds of hours in custom games. This was before the practice tool as well. Just
Hey baby, why don't you go back that ass up and go ahead and sit down right over here. You know, if you can get anything to drink, you know, you want some water, iced tea, maybe some coffee. Draft pick became the thing, you know, before like drafting your roles. That's what ranked was like, I'm going mid, but I called mid first. Yeah, well, fuck you. And then you put Teemo mid and you feed 0 and 13. That was what it was. Be lucky you have what you have. God, what have I become? I'm the one like trying to get top lane first. I'm the one like auto locking in Riven. Okay. I swear to God, you motherfuckers, you do a thing to stop me. I am the best Riven man on the planet. No one is as good as me.
It's about having a fully dynamic game engine is all of this just works.
Oh, sorry. So it appears that we'll be fighting Camille top lane, which actually does kind of suck for me because Camille can actually be a real pain in the ass as a Riven player, as someone who has played Camille and generally does rather well against Riven. However, the other option would be that I might get murdered by one punch summoner Teemo over there, but that's probably mid lane. Actually, no, where do they have Katarina? Wait a minute. Is it Teemo support? Oh man, just a Vietnamese. I mean, yeah, I guess that's just what you are, man. I mean, right. This is why I play this champion. Right. Forgot. No, I didn't forget. You know, I went out and bought a whole new keyboard for this video. I'm not even kidding. I literally decided to change keyboards because one, I need like a nice little wrist pad, and the Razer is the Death Adder. No, that's the mouse. The Black Widow. The Black Widow, you know, it has this nice little squishy thing that comes with it. Not sponsored, but Razer, please sponsor me. But I'm not sponsored. And I use like the little yellow one. So when I was gonna be playing Riven, I knew I was gonna be smashing my keyboard to oblivion. So I thought instead of getting the red switches that are really like clicky, 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 and everything like that, I just get the yellow ones so you can't hear it so much, especially since I'm playing such a champion. I'm gonna be making a Yasuo and a Riven video. I need something that doesn't absolutely just burst your eardrums every single time I want to do a combo. So you would think that someone named One Punch Summoner will be playing a champion like Vi or something, not Teemo. Well, I've got lane pressure. I mean, that's pretty nice, you know? Like, I'm kind of taking over the lane. I got good CS. Oh, Jarvan's doing stuff. Oh, baby. Let's go, baby. Oh, yes! Holy shit, we got him! I probably can't do that one. Okay, I burned both my summoner spells, but we did get the... I saw that, J4. You can't hide from me. Ooh! Come on, Ari. She already burned Flash, right? Why would you do that? Why would you do that? What madman are you? Uh-oh. She is 2 levels higher than me, though. I had a feeling that would happen. Oh, dodged. Oh, I'm gone. I, like, smashed my keyboard a few times, and I'm out of here. Legit, I know Camille got her buffs, and I've been using her in ranked, and she's actually kind of scaring me now because of that exact thing. Ah, shit. She got... Oh, shit! Fuck off. Oh, shit. Everyone in bot lane just died. Ooh! Uh-oh. Oh, God. I fucked up. I think I can do this. I think if she goes in on me, I could probably do this. She missed that. Okay, let's try this shit out. Oh, no! Oh, that... Wait! Where the fuck did he come from? It's okay. I'm a master Riven player. Not master rank, just, you know. Ooh, I'm doing damage! Holy shit! I don't know, someone else got a lot of kills or something somewhere else in the map. I don't know who it was. Yes! Yes! I just hit buttons, man. I just.
Hello everyone and welcome to my top 10 Riven animation cancels and combos. Now the reason why I'm making this video is because everybody always asks me, hey man, which combos are the most important? How do I do this combo? Which one should I practice? And to start off with, I'm just going to tell you the most important thing is the fast combo, which is why that's what we're going to start off with in a second. By far and large, the most important thing for you to learn is the fast combo. Everything after that is just to practice on your own and really, learn at your own pace. But by far, if you want to learn Riven and get good with her as quick as you can, just learn how to do the fast combo. Without further ado, let's just get started. So number one is the fast combo. Like I said, this is her bread and butter. This is everything that Riven is essentially as a champion. If you can't do this, you're not going to be able to play her at a high level because Riven is all about spacing your auto attacks correctly in between your Qs, using your empowered autos, making the most use of her passive. A lot of people misconceptually think that Riven is actually more of a spellcaster or most of her damage comes from her spells, which is entirely not true. Most of Riven's damage actually comes from her auto attacks, but her spells are what empower her AAs. So if you don't auto attack very well and if you don't fast combo well, you're never going to do as much damage as you potentially could. Now it's worth noting that I actually do have a guide on this. It's like a 16-minute super boring guide that I made a while ago. It is a good video and it still holds up today. So if you haven't seen it, if you want to watch it, you can. It's boring, it takes forever, but that's pretty much the best way to learn without you just practicing it on your own. But as with all these combos, the most important part is just to practice. Now next up is the EWQ or the double cast combo. Now this is very important because Riven's W not only stuns the target, but it also stuns her because it locks her in the animation. When she releases the energy from her sword, it actually makes her stay where she is for a little while. So if you can double cast this and add a Q after your W, you can actually do it very quickly and you can use two abilities at the same time. What's also nice about this is if you have Thunderlords or Storm Raiders, this is a really easy way to proc those two masteries because you do a lot of damage very quickly. The most important thing about this is actually realizing you need to wait a little bit of time after you use your E before you lead into your WQ. So it's E, delay, about 0.2 seconds, and then WQ. You have 3/4 of a second after the delay to cast two abilities at the same time. So just practice it. E, wait a little bit, WQ, and you'll get it every time. Two abilities at the same time. So just practice it. E, wait a little bit, WQ, and you'll get it every time. Next up, we have the ERQ or the ER third Q. Now this is very nice because it allows you to cancel your R ability, it allows you to cast it, and also use the Wind Slash at the same time as using your Q. It's very similar to the EWQ double cast. You'll see that the E comes up a lot because the E enables the double cast abilities. A lot of Riven's combos will start off with her E because that allows all of these combos afterwards to use two abilities at the same time. However, in this case, it is worth noting because the R does not lock Riven in place, it does not lock her in the animation, technically you can just RQ, so you can do things like Flash RQ or R Flash Q. There's a lot that you can do that doesn't include the E, but the E is the easiest way to do this, but I just wanted to let that be noted. Also, if you do it without the third Q, it looks like this. Number 4 is the RW or the ERW. Once again, what sucks about Riven's W is that it locks her in place, but what you can do here is actually cast your Wind Slash at the same time as your W, so you're not wasting any time. You're still stun locked for a second, you're still locked in that animation of the W, but instead of only being stuck in it, why don't you just cast your Wind Slash with it? It's very nice, and it actually gets a lot of people off guard with how much damage you can do very quickly because you cast your Wind Slash and W at the same time, so there's two abilities hitting them at once, as well as a good way to finish off people when they're low. Number 5 is the infamous Tiamat W. Now, Tiamat can be used with multiple different abilities with Riven. It can be used with the R, it can be used with the E, it can be used with the Q, which is why I have that listed at the top, but the easiest thing to do, once again, the W locks you in place, but you can use the Tiamat and the W at the same time, so you're not wasting any animation time. Tiamat W, very nice, easy wave clear as well.
My spirit is not lost.
Welcome to Summoner's Rift.
Burdens of the past.
30 seconds until minions spawn.
So long.
Minions have spawned.
My should I proceed? It must come to pass. A sword mirrors its owner. What conflict awaits? Choose your own path. How should I proceed? What conflict awaits?
Things aren't gonna do you.
Riddance of the past. Choose your own path.
You need to relax.
My spirit is not lost. My hands are stained. So long I've wandered.
First blood.
Learn from your mistakes. Burdens of the past.
I've been slain. An ally has been slain. Enemy double kill.
How should I proceed? What conflict awaits? To serve the greater good. Choose your own path. Violence to end violence. Choose your own path. What conflict awaits? So long I've wandered. The sword mirrors its owner. My spirit is not lost. So much. Burdens of the past. My hands are stained.
An ally has been slain. An enemy has been slain.
Learn from your mistakes. How should I proceed? So long I've wandered.
You have slain an enemy.
Moment of clarity. My spirit is not lost. What conflict awaits? The sword mirrors its owner. conflict awaits. My spirit is not lost. For those who will to serve the greater good.
Your team has destroyed a turret.
Violence to end violence.
Your team has destroyed
Those who were lost.
That's it. Let your guard down.
A sword mirrors the
An
golden
ally has been slain.
I am awakened.
You have slain an enemy. Your team has destroyed a turret.
My hands are stained.
Your turret has been destroyed.
Memories of the past.
You have slain an enemy.
How should I proceed? Learn from your mistakes. Choose your own path. My spirit is not lost.
Slain.
Learn from
An
your
ally has been slain. An enemy has been slain. Killing spree.
A new They've crossed the line. How should I proceed?
slain. An ally has been slain.
Come on, touch me.
Down. An enemy has been slain. Has been slain. Unstoppable.
Burdens of the past.
You have slain an enemy.
Must be made. Choose your own path. How should I proceed?
Ally has been slain.
not lost. It must come to pass. My spirit is not lost. How should I proceed? Choose your own path.
Ally has been slain.
What conflict awaits?
Your team has destroyed an inhibitor. Your team has destroyed
The sword mirrors its owner. Learn from your mistakes.
down. You have slain an enemy.
Leave doubt behind.
An enemy has been slain.
So long I've wandered.
An ally has been slain.
Choose your own path.
Your team has destroyed an inhibitor.
I proceed. Burdens of the past. Learn from your mistakes.
An enemy has been slain. Double kill. Godlike. Legendary. Shut down.
Well, so that's worth noting. And also, it's just a very nice burst combo. Number 6 is one of the most important, R flashing. It's actually not flash R, that is written correctly, R flash. If you cast your wind slash and then immediately flash, you can extend the range of how far you can throw your wind slash and cast it immediately once you land from your flash little teleport. Practicing this is scary at first because if you mess it up, not only do you waste your wind slash, but you also waste your flash. So I would recommend you practice this in a custom game first before trying this in a real game. But once you get it once, honestly, it's not that hard to do because it's only 2 buttons. Next up is something very simple, but yet also very effective. This is QEQ. It allows you to cover a lot of ground very fast, and you can actually use 3 gap closers almost all instantaneously. It's kind of like, I don't know if it's glitched or what, but it actually allows you to use it faster than you would. You can actually QEQ faster than you can QQE or EQQ. Now, number 8 is a doozy, as you can see at the top of the screen, but I have R1 in parentheses because you already want to have your R activated before you start this. And I also have those abilities in green at the top because this technically falls under the category of a triple cast. This is not a double cast anymore. We are casting 3 abilities at the same time. We are Eing to activate our double or triple cast. We are R2, Q, W, all at the same time. Now, this combo was the first major combo that I learned, so if it doesn't have a name, you can just call this the Exile combo if you want, you know, it doesn't really matter. But the only bad thing about this combo is that there's no way to unlock yourself from the W animation. However, because you cast 3 abilities at the same time, this is a very high burst damage combo. The rest of it, after the green stuff, after the triple cast, you can really just cast whatever you want. You can Q team at, you can team at Q, you can auto team at Q. The rest is just what I did in this example, but you can throw in whatever flavor you want after your triple cast. Now, this is one of the hardest things to do on this list because this is the ER flash third Q. It's very important to do this if you want to know how to engage and win team fights on Riven because you can knock out potentially 3, 4, even 5 members of the enemy team. This will take you a lot of practice. You're going to mess this up a lot. You're going to use your third Q before your flash. You're going to use your R before your E. There's a lot of things that can be messed up here, but trust me, after a lot of practice, you will get this. In this case, it's actually very worth noting that it is much easier to do this if you have flash on F instead of D because you can actually go ERF in kind of an upside down L formation rather than ERD, which isn't quite in that L formation, so it's a little bit harder to do. And finally, number 10 is just going to be showing you guys a one-shot combo that I did on this vein here. This is from a real game. This is not against a bot. This is ERQ, Flash W, Auto Attack, RQ, Tiamat. Now, that's a mouthful. That's a lot to do, but honestly, it's not too hard once you just realize the parts. ERQ into Flash W into Auto Attack, RQ, Tiamat. So it's not as hard as you would think, but it is very difficult and will take you a lot of games to practice, like I said. But just remember to not give up. Don't give up on yourself and just keep practicing over and over and over again, and it will eventually come to you. Thank you guys so much for watching. If this helped you, please hit that like button because that helps me out. I help you, you help me. It's kind of a give and take, you know what I mean? Thank you guys so much, like I said. If you really liked it, hit that subscribe button. I'll see you guys tomorrow.
What is broken can be reforged.
could. Now, it's worth noting that I actually do have a guide on this. It's like a 16-minute super boring guide that I made a while ago. It is a good video, and it still holds up today. So if you haven't seen it, if you want to watch it, you can. It's boring, it takes forever, but that's pretty much the best way to learn without you just practicing it on your own. But as with all these combos, the most important part is just to practice. Now, next up is the EWQ, or the double cast combo. Now, this is very important because Riven's W not only stuns the target, but it also stuns her because it locks her in the animation. When she releases the energy from her sword, it actually makes her stay where she is for a little while. So if you can double cast this and add a Q after your W, you can actually do it very quickly, and you can use 2 abilities at the same time. What's also nice about this is if you have Thunderlords or Storm Raiders, this is a really easy way to proc those 2 masteries because you do a lot of damage very quickly. The most important thing about this is actually realizing you need to wait a little bit of time after you use your E before you lead into your WQ. So it's E, delay, about 0.2 seconds, and then WQ. You have 3/4 of a second after the delay to cast 2 abilities at the same time. So just practice it. E, wait a little bit, WQ, and you'll get it every time. Next up, we have the ERQ, or the ER third Q. Now, this is very nice because it allows you to cancel your R ability, it allows you to cast it, and also use the Wind Slash at the same time as using your Q. It's very similar to the EWQ double cast. You'll see that the E comes up a lot because the E enables the double cast abilities. A lot of Riven's combos will start off with her E because that allows all of these combos afterwards to use 2 abilities at the same time. However, in this case, it is worth noting because the R does not lock Riven in place, it does not lock her in the animation, technically you can just RQ, so you can do things like Flash RQ or R Flash Q. There's a lot that you can do that doesn't include the E, but the E is the easiest way to do this, but I just wanted to let that be noted. Also, if you do it without the third Q, it looks like this. Number 4 is the RW, or the ERW. Once again, what sucks about Riven's W is that it locks her in place, but what you can do here is actually cast your Wind Slash at the same time as your W, so you're not wasting any time. You're still stun locked for a second, you're still locked in that animation of the W, but instead of only being stuck in it, why don't you just cast your Wind Slash with it? It's very nice, and it actually gets a lot of people off guard with how much damage you can do very quickly because you cast your Wind Slash and W at the same time, so there's 2 abilities hitting them at once, as well as a good way to finish off people when they're low. Number 5 is the infamous TM. It's very similar to the EWQ double cast. You'll see that the E comes up a lot because the E enables the double cast abilities. A lot of Riven's combos will start off with her E.
Burdens of the past. There is no one. The time for talk is over.
Hey guys, how we doing? I hope everyone is having a wonderful day so far. I'm having a pretty good one. I woke up this morning about 6 or 7 a.m. I saw that the practice tool is going live on NA today, so I got to mess around with it, and I get to show you guys today exactly what you should be doing on Riven to get better and use the practice tool to its fullest. Now, what's awesome is I've been saying since the very beginning, ever since the practice tool came out, that Riven would be the best champion for the practice tool to come out for so you can practice with her. The thing is, League is not that hard to play in general. Most champions are very mechanically straightforward. A lot of them have a lot of point-and-click abilities, so it's not that hard to play overall. But Riven has plenty of combos, animation cancels, complicated things that you need to practice on and work on over and over again, and I've spent hundreds and hundreds of hours in custom games practicing, and the practice tool just makes all of this easier if you don't know. Basically, it's just an easier way. You can reset your cooldowns, you can practice flashing, you can practice combos. You basically have 100% CDR, and you can set the game the way you want it to be, which is amazing for Riven. So to start off, for the fast combo, the easiest thing I found is just to put a dummy as close to a wall as you possibly can. You can also put it like really close to the wall and then use your third Q to knock it even closer. And this is just because the closer it is, the less distance you have to close with your Q, so the shorter animation it is, and this is the best way to practice fast comboing. You can just Q auto over and over and over again. You see how my mouse moves from on the target to off the target, on the target, off the target. Next up, with 100% CDR, everything is super easy to practice, and the double cast is no different. If you don't know, the double cast combo is essentially you use your E first, you wait a little bit, there's a small delay, and then you can use two abilities at the exact same time. In this case, the best thing to do is the WQ. That's the best way to practice. It's a great way to proc your Thunderlords, which is why I brought it in this example. Trading and lane with this is so easy. If your opponent uses their major gap closer or uses their major escape, let's say Gnar uses his jump, this is a great way to practice and use your double cast on the target. It's just an awesome way to trade in lane, easy way to proc your Thunderlords, and it's a good way to finish somebody off if they're low. The next thing you're going to want to practice is your ER flash third Q. Now, this is the best way to initiate fights and start them on Riven. You get a big knockup, you can hit multiple people with it, and then you can lead into a stun and proc your Thunderlords and get a huge win slash off. Riven has a lot of AoE, and making good use of this using the ER flash third Q is the best. Way to do so. This is one of the most important things to learn, and if you struggled with this before, there's no excuse now that we have 100% CDR in the practice tool. It was hard to practice before because the flash was always on a 6-minute or, like a 5-minute cooldown. Super annoying to deal with, especially in custom games, because you just always wanted it to be on a low cooldown if you could, so this is a great way to practice that now. Next up, we have some shy combo variations. This is just the best way to one-shot somebody. This is the shy combo. If you don't know, it's just a combination of buttons, and it's basically your best one-shot combo. It combines everything that Riven has in her kit, and you can just one-shot somebody if done correctly. So you just want to practice doing many different variations of it. It involves RQing, the RQ animation cancel. It involves ER flash, third Q. You can, hop on somebody. You can do it without third queuing. You just want to practice doing as much damage as high DPS, and what's so nice is the target dummy actually has a DPS number on it, so you just want to try and max that number out. Next up, we have the Raptor Camp jump over towards mid lane. Now, this is a great way to surprise your opponents, especially if you are blue side and they are pushing towards you. Hopping over this wall, a lot of people don't think that you can, and it is pretty hard to do, but the best way to do this and replicate my results here, there's a good clip of me doing this like 7 or 8 times in a row. You just have to pay attention to where you put your feet. You want to third queue into the right side wall to kind of position yourself, and then you want to have Riven's back left foot somewhere near those 3 little tick marks. If you have your graphics, I think at least on medium, then you can see those 3 little tick marks on the Raptor Camp, and you just want to practice positioning yourself right there, and then you want to hop over the wall. You need to use your E though, because you need to dash closer towards the wall and then third Q. Eventually, with enough practice, you will be able to do it. It is a little bit difficult at first, but just pay attention to where your feet are. And there's also this dragon pit hop. A lot of people don't think that you can go over this wall, and I've used this plenty of times in a real game. This one's not as hard as the Raptor Camp. It's all about where you put your feet next to the little crescent thing on the ground. I'm not sure exactly what the little symbol is, but as long as you are a little bit behind it, and then you want to aim for the third outer ring around the dragon. As long as you go for the third ring, you should be able to just EQ over it, and it should be no problem. The next thing I practice is just doing the flash third Q over a wall. It's a little bit harder, especially if you don't know where your target is, so you need to get comfortable doing this over a wall and doing it blind. Let's say your opponent is in the fog of war, or they're kind of far away. You just need to practice doing this, especially if you don't know where your opponent is. You need to practice doing this blind. Now, with this build I have and being level 18, it's not that hard to solo Baron and Elder Dragon. The only reason I did it, and I recommend you to try it, is because it does fight back, which is kind of nice, and you can see exactly how much damage you do. You can see what the real DPS looks like. Obviously, these numbers are inflated because I wouldn't have these items in game. I wouldn't build Infinity Edge, no boots, full damage. This is a no C or like a 10% CDR build. So obviously, this is not a very realistic build, but you can just see exactly how much damage you can do and what it looks like to deal a lot of damage. 1v1ing these things is not too difficult, like I said, but as long as you can see roughly what your damage numbers are, and as long as you can practice dealing damage, then I think it's very helpful. And finally, the last thing I did is I just practiced on the target dummy, and I just went for maximum amount of total damage. So I just practiced all the combos over and over and over again. I think I got to like 300,000 damage before I got bored, but hell, go for 1 million, go for 2 million total damage on a target dummy. Practice any combo you're confused about. If it's the double cast, if it's the team at W, if it's the RQ, whatever it may be, just practice it over and over again on the target dummy. Go for like 1 million damage. That way you can practice any muscle mechanics or muscle memory that you may be lacking, because this allows you to really up your game and get that next level edge on your opponents, especially if you're like low elo and you don't know why you can't win trades.
So long I've wandered.
Welcome to Summoner's Rift. seconds until minions spawn. Minions have spawned.
My hands are stained. Learn from your mistakes. What conflict awaits? How should I proceed? Choose your own path. Burdens of the past.
First blood. Enemy has been slain. Enemy has been slain.
My spirit is not lost. Burdens of the past. Learn from your
Slain.
What conflict awaits?
An enemy has been slain. An ally has been slain. An enemy has been slain.
Those who were lost. Choose your own path. My spirit is not lost. My hands are stained.
been slain. Enemy double kill.
My spirit is not lost.
Enemy killing spree.
Learn from your mistakes. How should I proceed? My hands are still. Burdens of the past. My hands are stained.
All right is
Enemy
temporary.
has been slain. An enemy has been slain. Enemy rampage. An ally has been slain. A summoner has disconnected.
Choose your own path. How should I proceed?
An ally has been slain.
So long I've wandered. It must come. Learn from your mistakes. A sword mirrors its owner.
An ally has been slain.
There is no one.
Double kill. Your turret has been destroyed.
My spirit is not lost. not lost. Choose your own path.
An enemy dominated.
Those who were lost.
So long. Enemy dominated. Enemy rampage. Slain. You have slain an enemy.
Burdens of the
An
past.
enemy is unstoppable.
So foolish.
Your turret has been destroyed.
My hands are steady.
Your turret has been destroyed.
My spirit is not lost. How should I proceed?
An ally has been slain.
Unnecessary thought.
Your turret has been destroyed.
My is not lost. Learn from your mistakes. What
Thank you, Daddy. Oh, that's so good. Oh. Oh.
Oh my god, baby.
Oh, God. Oh, Mr. Shane. I got so big. Oh. Oh. my god. Oh.
Fuck yes. Oh my god. Oh baby, you get to stay in the academy for as long as you want. But you gotta keep it up though.